Welcome to TrueCrime Unveiled Podcast. Dive deep into the mysteries that captivate us. If you appreciate this episode, please consider liking and subscribing to support us.
In the heart of Silicon Valley, a land of dreams and innovation, a chilling tale of deception unfolded. This is the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, a company that promised to revolutionize the healthcare industry with a single drop of blood. It was a vision that captivated investors, politicians, and the public alike, propelling Holmes to the status of a billionaire prodigy. But beneath the veneer of groundbreaking technology lay a web of secrets, lies, and a fraud that would eventually unravel, leaving a trail of shattered trust and unanswered questions. We'll explore the intricate layers of this case, examining the personalities involved, the allure of the narrative, and the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition.
Elizabeth Holmes, a Stanford dropout with a mesmerizing stare and a Steve Jobs-esque persona, founded Theranos in 2003. Her revolutionary idea was to create a miniaturized blood testing device, the Edison, that could perform hundreds of tests with just a finger prick. This promised to disrupt the multi-billion-dollar diagnostics industry, making blood tests faster, cheaper, and more accessible to everyone. The narrative was compelling. A young, brilliant woman challenging the established order, determined to democratize healthcare. The potential impact on medical diagnostics was enormous, and the world watched in awe as Holmes built her empire, attracting powerful figures to her board and securing hundreds of millions in funding.
The allure of Theranos went beyond the technology itself. Holmes cultivated an image of unwavering confidence and a relentless drive, captivating audiences with her vision of a healthier future. She carefully crafted her public persona, adopting a deep voice, a uniform of black turtlenecks, and a captivating storytelling style. This carefully constructed image, combined with the promise of revolutionary technology, helped her secure partnerships with major corporations like Walgreens and Safeway. The media celebrated her as a visionary, further solidifying her image as a transformative figure in the tech world. The stage was set for a spectacular rise, but the foundations were built on sand.
Behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. The Edison device, the cornerstone of Theranos' claims, was plagued with problems. It simply couldn't perform the vast array of tests as advertised, and the results were often inaccurate and unreliable. Employees who raised concerns were silenced, and a culture of secrecy and fear permeated the company. The truth about Theranos' technology remained hidden from the public, masked by a carefully orchestrated campaign of misinformation and intimidation. This is where our deep dive begins, unraveling the complexities of the Theranos fraud, exploring the motivations behind the deception, and examining the devastating consequences that followed. Less than / person one greater than, less than person one greater than. Before the whirlwind of accusations and legal battles, Elizabeth Holmes resided in Atherton, California, a town known for its affluence and tranquility. Imagine tree-lined streets, sprawling estates hidden behind manicured hedges, and an atmosphere of quiet prosperity. This was the backdrop against which Holmes built her empire, a stark contrast to the chaos that would later ensue. Residents of Atherton typically enjoyed a life of privilege, focused on family, education, and community events. The rhythm of life was predictable, undisturbed, and seemingly insulated from the high-stakes world of Silicon Valley, just a short drive away. Holmes herself cultivated an image that fit seamlessly into this environment, projecting an aura of success and innovation that garnered respect and admiration from her neighbors and peers. This carefully constructed image, however, masked the deception that was brewing beneath the surface.
The community of investors, initially captivated by Holmes' vision, also experienced a sense of security. They were drawn to the promise of revolutionizing healthcare, of making blood testing accessible and affordable. These were individuals who had achieved significant success in their own fields and were accustomed to making calculated risks. Investing in Theranos, with its charismatic young founder and groundbreaking technology, seemed like a smart and potentially lucrative move. Due diligence was conducted, of course, but the aura of legitimacy surrounding Holmes and her company was strong. They believed in her narrative, her claims of having developed a revolutionary blood testing device. They trusted her vision, and in doing so they placed their faith and their funds in a venture that would ultimately prove to be a mirage.
Holmes' public persona further reinforced this sense of trust. She carefully crafted an image of herself as a dedicated scientist and visionary entrepreneur, drawing comparisons to Steve Jobs in her attire and demeanor. Her deep voice, her unwavering gaze, her confident pronouncements about the revolutionary capabilities of Theranos technology, all contributed to a compelling narrative that captivated investors and the media alike. This carefully cultivated image projected an air of competence and credibility, making it difficult for many to question the veracity of her claims. The combination of her personal charisma and the promise of a transformative technology created an environment where skepticism was easily dismissed, paving the way for the perpetuation of the fraud.
It's crucial to remember that at this stage, the illusion was perfectly maintained. The technology demonstrations were carefully orchestrated, the results were manipulated, and the narrative was tightly controlled. Investors were shown what they wanted to see, and they heard what they wanted to hear. The potential impact of the technology on healthcare was emphasized, with promises of early disease detection and personalized medicine. These promises resonated deeply with investors, many of whom had personal experiences with the limitations of traditional blood testing. They were presented with a vision of a future where healthcare was more accessible, more efficient, and more personalized. This powerful narrative, coupled with the apparent validation from reputable individuals and institutions, created an environment where skepticism was effectively silenced.
Before the whirlwind of investigations and legal battles, Elizabeth Holmes cultivated an image of revolutionary innovation within the seemingly ordinary setting of Palo Alto, California. Silicon Valley, known for its disruptive technologies, became the backdrop for Theranos' rise. Holmes, a Stanford dropout, exuded an aura of ambition and promise, captivating investors with her vision of accessible and affordable blood testing. She spoke of a world where a pinprick of blood could reveal a wealth of medical information, a world where early detection could conquer diseases. This narrative resonated deeply, drawing in influential figures and vast sums of money. But behind this facade of progress, a subtle disruption began to brew, a shadow lurking beneath the surface of this seemingly revolutionary enterprise. The narrative was compelling, almost too good to be true. And as we'll see, it was.
Indeed, the early days of Theranos painted a picture of remarkable potential. Holmes's charisma and conviction were infectious. Her vision promised to revolutionize healthcare, and she assembled a board of directors that included prominent figures like former Secretaries of State Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, adding further legitimacy to her claims. Theranos secured partnerships with major corporations like Walgreens, eager to offer this revolutionary blood testing technology to their customers. The company's valuations soared, reaching billions of dollars, and Holmes became a Silicon Valley icon, gracing magazine covers and inspiring aspiring entrepreneurs. However, beneath the veneer of success, whispers of doubt began to circulate. Employees within Theranos started to question the efficacy and accuracy of the technology, noticing discrepancies between the promised capabilities and the actual performance of the Edison machines, the core of Theranos' blood testing technology.
These whispers of doubt, initially confined within the walls of Theranos, gradually began to seep into the outside world. The image of seamless innovation started to crack, revealing glimpses of the turmoil beneath. While Holmes maintained a steadfast public persona, projecting confidence and assurance, behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding. Employees who raised concerns were reportedly met with intimidation and threats, creating a culture of fear and secrecy within the company. This suppression of dissent further fueled the growing suspicion that something was amiss at Theranos. The seemingly utopian vision of revolutionizing healthcare was slowly morphing into a narrative of deception and potential fraud.
The initial allure of Theranos, fueled by Holmes's compelling narrative and the promise of groundbreaking technology, began to wane as skepticism grew. Journalists started investigating the company's claims, digging deeper into the discrepancies between the projected capabilities of the Edison machines and their actual performance. Whistleblowers, risking their careers and reputations, bravely came forward to expose the truth about the flawed technology. These revelations shattered the carefully constructed image of Theranos, exposing the chasm between the projected reality and the actual workings of the company. The shadow that had lurked beneath the surface was now becoming impossible to ignore.
Let's delve into the first significant instance that raised red flags about Theranos' claims. In 2013, Walgreens partnered with Theranos to offer blood tests in their stores, a seemingly groundbreaking move for accessible healthcare. However, behind the scenes, a very different picture was emerging. Internal emails and documents revealed that Theranos employees were expressing serious concerns about the accuracy and reliability of their Edison machines, the very technology they were touting as revolutionary. These concerns weren't just whispers. They painted a picture of a company knowingly using technology that wasn't ready for public use, potentially endangering patients' health. This is where the cracks in the facade truly began to show. And it's crucial to understand the timeline of these internal warnings in relation to the Walgreens rollout.
The Walgreens partnership is a pivotal point in the Theranos story. Holmes presented her technology as capable of performing hundreds of tests with just a finger prick of blood, a claim that attracted Walgreens and captivated the public. But internally, the reality was far less impressive. The Edison machines were plagued by inaccuracies and inconsistencies, producing results that were often unreliable. Furthermore, Theranos was secretly using modified commercially available analyzers for many of their tests, rather than their own proprietary technology. This deception, perpetrated while they were actively promoting the Edison as a game-changer, represented a fundamental betrayal of trust, not only to Walgreens, but also to the patients who believed they were receiving cutting-edge and reliable testing.
The internal struggle within Theranos is a critical piece of this puzzle. Employees who raised concerns were often silenced or marginalized. Some were even threatened with legal action for voicing their doubts about the technology's efficacy. This culture of fear created an environment where dissent was stifled, allowing the deception to continue unchecked. Imagine working in a place where you knew the technology was flawed, potentially harming patients, but felt powerless to speak up. It's a testament to the power Holmes held over her employees and the lengths to which she went to protect her fabricated narrative.
The Walgreens partnership, initially hailed as a revolutionary step in healthcare, quickly became a source of mounting problems. Reports began to surface of inaccurate test results, leading to misdiagnoses and unnecessary medical interventions. Patients who relied on these tests were unknowingly receiving potentially life-altering information based on faulty technology. The impact of this deception extended far beyond financial implications. It directly impacted individuals' health and well-being. This marked a significant escalation in the severity of the fraud, moving from internal discrepancies to real-world consequences for unsuspecting individuals.
The initial public reaction was a mix of disbelief and a creeping sense of unease. Here was a company, once lauded as revolutionary, now facing accusations of outright fraud. Investors, many of whom had poured substantial sums into Theranos, began to grapple with the potential for significant financial losses. Beyond the monetary implications, however, a deeper fear began to emerge. This wasn't just about bad investments. It was about the potential compromise of people's health. The realization that the blood tests, touted as a groundbreaking advancement, might have provided inaccurate results, sparked widespread anxiety. How many diagnoses were missed? How many treatments were wrongly prescribed? The uncertainty was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the unfolding scandal case. The very foundation of trust in medical technology seemed to be shaken.
The Wall Street Journal's investigative reporting acted as a catalyst, triggering a cascade of investigations. Regulatory bodies, including the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, launched their own inquiries, scrutinizing Theranos' practices and technology. Simultaneously, lawsuits began to mount, filed by both investors and patients who claimed they had been harmed by the company's faulty blood testing devices. What had once been a narrative of innovation and disruption quickly transformed into a story of alleged deception and potential medical malpractice. The speed and intensity of the fallout were remarkable, a testament to the gravity of the allegations and the sheer number of individuals and institutions potentially affected. The once celebrated entrepreneur, Elizabeth Holmes, now found herself at the center of a maelstrom, facing increasing scrutiny from multiple fronts. The aura of invincibility that had once surrounded her began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of vulnerability.
It's important to remember the wider context here. Theranos emerged during a period of intense Silicon Valley optimism, a time when disruptive technologies were often embraced with minimal critical evaluation. The narrative of a young Stanford dropout revolutionizing healthcare resonated deeply with investors and the public alike. This cultural backdrop arguably contributed to the initial acceptance of Theranos' claims, despite the lack of robust scientific validation. The subsequent downfall serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked hype and the importance of rigorous due diligence, especially in fields with such significant implications for public health and safety. The cracks in the Theranos facade had been appearing for some time, whispered concerns among industry insiders and former employees, but it was the investigative journalism that finally brought the house of cards tumbling down.
The fear wasn't confined to individual patients or investors. The Theranos case raised serious questions about the regulatory oversight of the healthcare industry. How could a company with such questionable technology have operated for so long, seemingly under the radar? The scrutiny extended to the regulatory bodies themselves, prompting discussions about the adequacy of existing safeguards and the need for stricter protocols for validating new medical technologies. The case highlighted the potential for systemic failures, the possibility that even well-intentioned regulations could be circumvented or exploited. The ripple effect of the Theranos scandal extended far beyond the company itself, impacting public trust in both the healthcare sector and the regulatory agencies tasked with its oversight. It was a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the potential consequences when innovation outpaces regulation and scrutiny.
Let's delve deeper into Elizabeth Holmes's psychology. Her outward persona was meticulously crafted. She deliberately lowered her voice, adopted a Steve Jobs-esque uniform of black turtlenecks, and cultivated an intense, unblinking stare. This created an aura of seriousness, authority, and unwavering conviction. It's fascinating how she consciously constructed this image, seemingly to project an impression of profound intellect and trustworthiness. However, this carefully constructed facade masked a complex and arguably troubling psychology. We need to examine the contradictions between her outward projection and the reality of her actions to understand the full scope of her deception. Did she believe her own lies, or was this a calculated performance from the beginning?
Holmes' behavior exhibits a classic narcissistic pattern. The grandiose claims about Theranos' technology, the relentless pursuit of funding and media attention, and the unwavering belief in her own vision, despite mounting evidence to the contrary, all point towards a narcissistic personality structure. This kind of personality often struggles to differentiate between reality and their own idealized self-image. They can become so convinced of their own brilliance and importance that they disregard any information that contradicts their narrative. In Holmes' case, this manifested as a refusal to acknowledge the flaws in her technology and a tendency to blame others for the company's failures. This, combined with her meticulously constructed public persona, raises serious questions about her capacity for self-deception.
It's crucial to consider the impact of the Silicon Valley culture on Holmes's psychology and actions. The fake-it-till-you-make-it mentality, prevalent in the tech startup world, may have played a significant role in her behavior. This culture often encourages risk-taking and bold pronouncements, even in the absence of concrete results. While this approach can drive innovation, it can also create a breeding ground for deception and fraud. In Holmes's case, it's possible that the pressure to live up to the hype surrounding Theranos, combined with her own ambition and narcissistic tendencies, led her down a path of increasingly elaborate lies and cover-ups.
The contradictions in Holmes's behavior are striking. On one hand, she displayed remarkable charisma and persuasiveness, convincing seasoned investors and influential figures to support her vision. She cultivated relationships with powerful individuals like Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, leveraging their reputations to bolster her own credibility. On the other hand, she demonstrated a blatant disregard for ethical and legal boundaries, falsifying data, misleading investors, and endangering patients. This disconnect between her public persona and her private actions suggests a profound lack of empathy and a willingness to exploit others for personal gain. It's a perplexing and disturbing duality that demands further examination.
Let's delve into the investigative process that eventually brought down Theranos. It was a complex web of secrecy, intimidation, and misleading information. One key aspect was the difficulty investigators faced in obtaining cooperation from former Theranos employees. Many had signed stringent non-disclosure agreements and feared legal repercussions. This wall of silence significantly hampered the initial stages of the investigation. There were also reports of Theranos' own internal security team actively monitoring and attempting to thwart any external inquiries, further adding to the challenge. These roadblocks created valuable lost time, allowing crucial evidence to potentially be destroyed or tampered with. The investigators had to navigate this carefully, using legal pressure and building trust with potential whistleblowers to break through the silence.
Adding to the complexity were instances of what could be interpreted as taunting or dismissive communication from within Theranos. While not directly admitting guilt, certain responses to inquiries from journalists and regulatory bodies were evasive and, at times, almost mocking in tone. This behavior, while not criminal in itself, certainly added to the suspicion surrounding the company and its practices. It fueled speculation about what they were trying to hide. Simultaneously, Holmes continued to project an aura of confidence, making public appearances and reiterating her belief in the technology. This created a confusing narrative for the public, and perhaps even instilled a false hope among some investors that the allegations were unfounded.
The missed leads in the early stages also played a significant role. Initially, the focus was primarily on the technology itself, whether it worked as claimed. However, as we now know, the deception ran much deeper, encompassing the company's financial practices, lab procedures, and the very culture of secrecy it fostered. Had investigators looked beyond the efficacy of the blood testing technology sooner, perhaps the fraud could have been uncovered earlier, limiting the damage done. The sheer audacity of the deception, coupled with Holmes's charismatic persona, contributed to this initial misdirection.
Precisely. The investigation was a long and arduous process, hampered by legal hurdles, deliberate obfuscation, and a complex web of interconnected deceptions. The false hope sustained by Holmes' public pronouncements and the initial focus on the technology itself allowed the fraudulent activities to continue for far longer than they should have. Unraveling this complex scheme required painstaking work, piecing together fragmented information and overcoming a culture of fear and intimidation. The investigation serves as a stark reminder of the importance of robust regulatory oversight and the vigilance required to expose corporate malfeasance.
Let's delve into the human cost of the Theranos deception. Beyond the financial losses, the emotional toll on patients, investors, and the wider community was significant. Many patients made critical medical decisions based on inaccurate Theranos blood test results. Imagine receiving a false positive for a serious illness. The anxiety, the unnecessary treatments, the fear gripping you and your family. Conversely, a false negative could lead to delayed diagnoses and potentially life-threatening consequences. The breach of trust, the feeling of being exploited, and the psychological impact of these inaccurate results cannot be overstated. These weren't just numbers on a report. They were attached to real people, real lives, real fears. This betrayal had a deep and lasting impact.
Absolutely. We've spoken to several individuals who experienced this firsthand. One woman, a young mother, received a false positive for a blood clotting disorder during her pregnancy. The stress and uncertainty she endured for weeks were immense, affecting not only her health but also her family's well-being. The constant worry, the consultations with specialists, the potential risks associated with the incorrect diagnosis, all took a tremendous toll. Another individual, an older gentleman, received a falsely low result for a key indicator related to his heart condition. This led to a delayed diagnosis and ultimately contributed to a significant decline in his health. These are just two examples of the many lives disrupted by the inaccuracies of Theranos' technology.
The long-term unease and trauma are palpable even now, years after the company's downfall. Many individuals still struggle with the emotional aftermath, questioning medical diagnoses they received during the period when Theranos was operating. The erosion of trust in the healthcare system, the feeling of vulnerability, and the lingering anxiety are all part of the enduring legacy of this fraud. It's a sobering reminder of the human cost associated with corporate malfeasance, a cost that often goes unquantified in the headlines.
And let's not forget the impact on the employees of Theranos. Many were bright, dedicated individuals who genuinely believed in the company's mission. They poured their time, energy, and expertise into developing and promoting the technology, only to discover they had been misled. The disillusionment, the betrayal, and the damage to their professional reputations were profound. Some even faced legal scrutiny and career setbacks. The fallout from the Theranos scandal rippled through the biotech industry, leaving a stain on the sector and impacting investor confidence in promising startups.
The meticulously crafted facade began to crumble under the weight of mounting scrutiny. Whistleblowers, initially hesitant, started to emerge from within Theranos, their accounts painting a disturbing picture of a company built on deception. Tyler Shultz, grandson of former Secretary of State George Shultz, a Theranos board member, became a key source, revealing to the Wall Street Journal reporter John Kerry Maru the discrepancies between the promised capabilities of the Edison device and its actual performance. These revelations, published in a series of investigative articles, acted as the first domino in Holmes's downfall. The articles detailed how Theranos was using commercially available machines for most of its blood tests, not the revolutionary Edison technology they touted, and that the results produced by the Edison were often inaccurate and unreliable. This public exposure triggered investigations by regulatory bodies, including the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, finally piercing the veil of secrecy surrounding Theranos.
The unraveling accelerated rapidly. Facing intense pressure from regulators, investors, and the public, Holmes maintained a defiant stance, clinging to her narrative of innovation and disruption. She attempted to discredit the whistleblowers and the journalists, portraying them as disgruntled employees seeking to sabotage the company. However, the evidence against Theranos and Holmes continued to accumulate. Internal documents, emails, and lab reports corroborated the whistleblowers' accounts, revealing a systematic pattern of deception and fraud. The once celebrated Edison technology was exposed as a sham, incapable of delivering the revolutionary blood testing capabilities Holmes had promised. The company's valuation plummeted, and partnerships with major corporations dissolved, leaving Theranos teetering on the brink of collapse.
In 2018, the inevitable occurred. The SEC charged Holmes and former Theranos president Ramesh Sunny Balwani with massive fraud. The charges alleged that they had engaged in a multi-year scheme to defraud investors by making false and misleading statements about the company's technology, business, and financial performance. Holmes and Balwani were accused of deceiving investors into believing that their technology could perform hundreds of blood tests with just a few drops of blood, when in reality, the technology was unreliable and could only perform a limited number of tests. The SEC also alleged that Holmes and Balwani had misled investors about the company's financial performance and its partnerships with major pharmaceutical companies. The charges marked a dramatic fall from grace for the once lauded entrepreneur.
Holmes and Balwani were arrested and released on bail. The once bright star of Silicon Valley, hailed as the next Steve Jobs, now faced the prospect of a lengthy trial and potential prison sentence. The story of Theranos served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition, the allure of Silicon Valley hype, and the importance of rigorous due diligence. While Holmes continued to maintain her innocence, the mountain of evidence against her seemed insurmountable. The arrest marked a pivotal moment in the case, signaling the beginning of a long and complex legal battle that would ultimately determine the fate of Elizabeth Holmes and expose the full extent of the Theranos deception.
It's chilling, isn't it? We've spent 10 episodes meticulously dissecting this case, poring over the evidence, the testimonies, the sheer audacity of it all. And yet, I still find myself grappling with the unsettling reality that Elizabeth Holmes operated in plain sight. She built this elaborate facade, a meticulously crafted illusion of revolutionary technology, and convinced some of the most powerful and influential people in the world to buy into it. She wasn't hiding in the shadows. She was on magazine covers, giving TED Talks, lauded as a visionary. It begs the question, how many other meticulously constructed deceptions are lurking just beneath the surface, hidden in plain sight, waiting to be unveiled?
It's a sobering thought. The Theranos case serves as a stark reminder of the seductive power of narrative. Holmes tapped into a deep-seated human desire for revolutionary advancements, for quick fixes, for a better future. She presented a compelling story, and people, desperate to believe, suspended their disbelief. They overlooked the red flags, ignored the whispers of doubt, and invested not only their money but their trust in a carefully constructed fabrication. The veneer of Silicon Valley innovation, the Stanford pedigree, the carefully cultivated image of a brilliant, driven entrepreneur, it all contributed to the illusion. It makes you wonder how many other visionaries are out there, weaving similar webs of deceit, capitalizing on hope and exploiting our inherent trust in those who appear to hold the keys to progress.
And the damage, both financial and emotional, inflicted by Holmes is profound. Investors lost millions, patients received inaccurate and potentially harmful blood test results, and the credibility of the entire biotech industry suffered a significant blow. The Theranos saga serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of due diligence, critical thinking, and the dangers of blindly accepting narratives without scrutiny. It underscores the crucial role of whistleblowers, like Tyler Schultz, in exposing fraud and holding those in power accountable. Their courage to speak truth to power, despite immense pressure and personal risk, is a testament to the importance of ethical conduct and the pursuit of justice.
Absolutely. The bravery of individuals like Tyler Schultz cannot be overstated. They are the true heroes of this story, the ones who dared to challenge the carefully constructed narrative and expose the truth. And while justice has been served in the legal sense, the broader questions linger. How do we prevent this from happening again? How do we foster a culture of accountability and transparency, particularly in industries where innovation and disruption are often celebrated above all else? These are the questions we must grapple with, the lessons we must learn, to prevent future Theranoses from emerging from the shadows, or perhaps more accurately, from plain sight.
Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant.
This case remains unsolved. Perhaps the truth is still out there,